I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, and pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time is yielded for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule, House Resolution 466. The rule provides for consideration of what may be the very single most significant piece of legislation that I've had the opportunity to vote on since coming to this body over 10 months ago. This rule is what allows the House of Representatives to move forward and vote on H.J. Res. 2, a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. My resolution that we're considering here today suspends the rules and allows the House to vote on H.J. Res. 2. I'm sure that some of my colleagues may be concerned we're moving to consider the balanced budget amendment under the suspension of the rules for fear it would somehow limit debate. I agree with them. Amending the United States Constitution is not to be taken lightly. This is why the rule provides for 5 hours of debate on this vital issue. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, what we're doing here today is something that should be discussed, something that must be discussed. We're fundamentally challenging the way Washington works. As you know what? It's about time. It's about time we had a real conversation about how our nation spends its money. It's about time that we made the federal government budget the way I did when I was a sheriff of a county in Florida. It's about time that we balance the federal checkbook the way American families do every day. It's about time. That's what I think, and more importantly, that's what the majority of the American people think. It's a mere fact that we're here today is a failure of leadership. For decades, Washington politicians have kicked the can down the road, choosing to deficit spending over fiscal responsibility, choosing frivolous pork projects, wasteful programs, and easy answers over making tough decisions and cutting back. Republicans did it when they were in power, and Democrats did it when they were in power too. Nobody is blameless in getting us to where we are today. But the days of finger pointing are over. We don't have the luxury of time to look back and play the blame game. We need to move forward and find a solution to get us out of the hole that we're already in. A balanced budget amendment is a vital part of doing just that. Yesterday, the United States surpassed $15 trillion in debt. Let me say that again. We're now $15 trillion in debt. While recognizing this sad landmark, I can't but help think about the fact that this didn't have to be the way it is. In 1997, the House of Representatives passed a balanced budget amendment. Unfortunately, the Senate failed to pass this amendment by one vote. One vote, Mr. Speaker. One vote that would separate us from a road towards fiscal responsibility to where we are today. So here we go again, 14 years later, having the same debate. I can't stand here today without thinking about my 3 sons. With a debt of $15 trillion, each of my boys owe over $48,000 in debt, in national debt. It means that children and grandchildren of each and every person in this room owes $48,000 to the federal government. $48,000 that they didn't spend, that they didn't ask for, and that they now are saddled with by a government of excesses. Only one senator stood between where we are now and $15 trillion in debt and where we could have been. So today I stand up in support of this rule and support H.J. Res. 2. I stand up for my kids, my future grandkids, and for all Americans who are saddled with that $48,000 in debt from the day that they're born. I stand up for Congress a second chance. I stand for giving Congress a second chance, a chance to get it right this time. Unfortunately, I understand the Democratic leadership is whipping against this. Mr. Speaker, I don't know how else to say this. This simply baffles me. Thanks to the whipping efforts of the Democratic leadership, there are members in the House who voted for the balanced budget amendment in 1997 who now say they're going to oppose it. In fact, 2 members of the Democrats' 3-person leadership team voted for the 97 amendment. I've only been here in D.C., like I said, for a little over 10 months, but all of the inexplicable things I've seen since coming to Congress, this just stumps me more than just about anything else I've seen here. What could these members have been seeing between 1997 and today that makes them say, yeah, you know what, spending is right on target. Let's just stick with the status quo. It's dumbfounding. It's often said the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different outcome. I don't understand how anybody can argue that we can continue to spend the way we do and expect to free ourselves from this monstrous burden of debt. We need to break the cycle. We've got to hold Congress's feet to the fire now and into the future. A balanced budget amendment is a change away from the status quo and back to sanity. I don't think I could say it better than Congressman DeFazio said in his letter to his Democratic colleagues when he wrote that, quote, Democrats walk away from sincere bipartisan effort will have let the American electorate down. If any of us walk away from this effort, we will have let all Americans down. We've been working without a budget, this greatest nation, for over 900 days now. Continuing resolutions and debt ceiling increases are not the answer. Super committees and sequestration is not the answer. Enough's enough. Today we have a clear choice, whether you want to change the status quo or you don't. Either you believe that government must operate responsibly in a balanced budget, or you don't. Either you want to rescue our nation, ourselves, our children, and our children's children from crippling debt, or you don't. I'd like to close with the words of Ronald Reagan, who once said this, in quote, the congressional budget process is neither reliable nor credible. In short, it needs to be fixed. We desperately need the power of a constitutional amendment to help us balance our budget, unquote. Now that is presidential leadership. With that, I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule, yes on the underlying legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Florida reserves its time. The